9:30 on a Tuesday night, I found myself flat on a gurney in Huntsville Hospital's hallway, gazing at a water-damaged ceiling tile with a crack resembling a fault line. Despite the morphine starting to wear off, my thoughts weren't clouded by madness or agony, although the pain was unparalleled, localized just beneath my ribs and spreading like heat emanating from a burning coal. I wasn't thinking about football because of any insanity or delirium. Rather, it was a reminder of the fundamental lesson I instilled in around 400 students over 22 years of coaching high school ball in Decatur, Alabama. When you fall, you rise. You don't linger on the field waiting for aid. You don't make excuses. You stand up. And yet here I was, lying helplessly in a hospital hallway, anticipating my wife's call that I knew she wouldn't answer, deep down in my heart. 43-year-old Curtis Aldridge has been coaching defensive line at Jefferson High School for 16 years, following 6 years as an assistant coach at a junior college in Gadsden. Prior to this, I owned a house on Willowbrook Drive with a long-overdue driveway repair. Currently, I'm driving a 2017 F-150 with 140,000 miles and a persistent check engine light. Despite my life's policy of not owing anything that couldn't be repaid, I found myself in need of $3,501 fateful night in the hospital. My ex-wife's response on the phone while I lay there with a ruptured appendix and a surgeon waiting remains etched in my memory, serving as a vivid reminder of her true character. This moment didn't break me, but it revealed the hidden truth about her when the darkness set in. 4 days after Diane returned to that hospital, enraged and shouting so loudly that nurses rushed over, I finally grasped what the past 3 years of my marriage had truly been about. However, I've jumped ahead. First, there's Renee. To comprehend the rest, you need to know who Renee is. If you're new here, welcome. Before proceeding, I urge you to click that subscribe button immediately. These tales demand my utmost honesty, and knowing you're here makes it all worthwhile. Similar to this video, please leave a comment below. Share with me if anyone has ever appeared for you when you least anticipated it. Let's delve into this together. I encountered Diane Calloway at a fundraiser for the school athletic department in the fall of 2019. She was 41, having recently divorced and working as an office manager for a dental practice on Highway 72. She exhibited an alluring poise that appealed to me. She remained calm without showing signs of distress. It seemed she skillfully managed situations, though in retrospect, what I was witnessing was a master of maintaining an impressive facade. We got married 18 months later in April 2021 at a private ceremony in the Botanical Garden, Huntsville. Diane's sister, Renee, served as her maid of honor. I recall thinking on that day how dissimilar they appeared. Diane was tall, well-groomed, always immaculately presented, and Renee was shorter, reserved, typically found in the background of photographs, not due to shyness, but because she preferred to let others enjoy their moments. On that day, Renee smiled at me from across the aisle and cautioned, "You'd better treat her well, Curtis." To which I responded, "Yes, ma'am," sincerely intending every word. For approximately a year, we managed well with our schedules packed, occasionally too much so that we missed some details, but we were okay. I was engrossed in the football season, while Diane worked lengthy hours, and we dined together 3 or 4 times a week, which seemed sufficient. Then the football season concluded, leaving us homebound together frequently, and I began to observe aspects unnoticed before. Diane had a habit of keeping tabs on expenses. Every penny spent was logged, assessed, and contrasted with an invisible balance sheet I was never privy to but expected to respect. If I made a purchase for the household, like a new water heater or lawn mower, she would bring it up again later, sometimes weeks or even months later. This wasn't exactly a dispute, more of a reminder, a gentle nudge, similar to reminding someone of an overdue debt. My earnings from coaching high school football are not particularly generous. Yearly, I earn $54,000, supplemented by additional income from summer private training and a football camp amounting to approximately $8,000. Compared to my income, Diane earned slightly more as a dental office manager, subtly asserting that her earnings were hers and mine were collective. I should have challenged this perspective, but raised to maintain harmony, I didn't. My father always said a peaceful home is a content one, a sentiment I unwittingly brought into our marriage, lugging its unnoticed weight. By the summer of 2023, there was an icy chill between us. It wasn't loud or violent. It was simply cold. We resided under the same roof, dined together, shared a bed, yet a chasm existed that I couldn't bridge. I attempted to address this divide by proposing we seek counseling, but my suggestion was met with a look of bewilderment, as if I had proposed we learn to fly without a parachute. She asserted, "We are not at fault. You cease to persist with your accusations. The blame lies with me. I acknowledge this. I don't intend to portray Diane as the antagonist in a narrative where I am the blameless husband, because that is not the truth. I was overly cautious about conflicts, a characteristic that was unfair to us both. I had been led to believe that expressing concerns would spark disagreements, and I, like many men raised to be stoic, decided it was more important to maintain harmony than to speak honestly. Thus, I suppressed issues, initially minor ones, then gradually larger ones, until there were matters that required open discussion but remained unspoken. What I couldn't suppress, and what I felt in a way I could hardly express, was the solitude. I was constantly surrounded by young men who regarded me with admiration. I had a group that would charge through obstacles for me. However, the admiration and support did not alleviate the loneliness. In those stands, I had parents who relied on me for their son's growth, a responsibility I never took lightly. It was as significant to me as anything else I'd ever undertaken. Yet, at home, I felt like an inhabitant rather than the owner of my house, as if I were merely renting a space that could be reclaimed at any time. I don't wish to label Diane as evil. She was just someone who required a certain type of companion, one more driven, financially astute, socially adept, and successful, and she believed I could transform into that person with enough consistent persuasion. I too assumed the pressure was merely an expression of affection in a challenging form. We were both mistaken about each other. The distinct factor is that I discovered my error in a hospital corridor, while September brought along pain, initially a subtle throb on a Thursday, which gradually intensified. I suspected an injury during practice. Our initial game of the season occurred on Friday, and throughout the week I had been moving around with children. I swallowed some Advil without giving it much thought. However, by Friday morning, the pain had intensified. By afternoon, while standing on the sidelines watching my boys warm up for the game, the pain shifted to a lower, sharper location and acquired that distinct quality of pain that makes one aware of every breath. I coached the game regardless. We ended up losing 21-14, and afterwards I shook hands with the other coach, rode the bus back with my team, and encouraged them to stay positive. By the time I reached home that night, I had a fever. I didn't want to disturb Diane, who had already had a long week. I am known for being extremely persistent about not admitting when I'm unwell, a trait that my team can confirm. I drank some water, checked my temperature, 101.8, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up knowing something was severely wrong. The pain had intensified, centering in my lower right abdomen, immovable regardless of position change. I returned from the bathroom, finding Diane awake, engrossed in her phone. "I think I need urgent care," I said. She glanced up. "What's going on?" "Stomach pain. It started Thursday with a fever last night." She gave me a look that was a blend of worry and annoyance. "Did you eat something spoiled?" "I don't believe so." "Curtis, it's Saturday morning." "Can this wait until Monday?" I stared back at her. "I have a fever." She sighed softly, expressing more aggravation than a full-blown argument would have, and returned to her phone. "All right, let me know." I drove myself to the urgent care on Beltline Road. The PA who examined me pressed my abdomen and advised me to head straight to the emergency room. I mentioned the term appendix amid an intense pain flare-up, my attention fixated on not making any noise around a stranger. I contacted Diane from the urgent care parking lot. "They're sending me to the ER, I said. "Can you come?" After a moment of quiet, she replied. Then, "I'm in the midst of something, Curtis. Are you driving yourself?" "Yes." "All right. Keep me updated when you arrive." I drove myself to Huntsville Hospital, parked in the emergency lot, walked through the doors, checked in at the desk, and sat on a plastic chair, pondering how I had led 312 football games throughout my career, yet never felt this way while exiting a field. Within 2 hours, the ER doctor diagnosed appendicitis, not just ordinary appendicitis, but one that was near rupture, a situation medical professionals compare to a detonated grenade with the pin already pulled. Surgery was required immediately, if feasible. This is where the $3,500 came into play. For years, I had kept around $3,500 saved for emergencies as part of my health insurance through the school district. However, when our home's HVAC unit broke down in August and required replacement instead of repair, I used that emergency fund to cover the cost, since Diane couldn't dip into her savings at that time. I hadn't managed to rebuild that cushion yet. In the hospital hallway, a financial counselor informed me they needed a payment arrangement confirmed before scheduling my surgery. The surgeon was ready, but the hospital demanded either $3,500 or a written confirmation of a payment plan with a minimum down payment of $1,200. I didn't have those funds readily available that evening. Diane answered on the third ring. The TV was audible in the background. "Hi," I expressed. "It appears they must perform surgery tonight, as my appendix is about to burst. Unfortunately, I don't have the necessary deductible funds due to the HVAC issue, requiring $3,500. Could you please transfer the sum from your account? I will repay you as soon as I recover." A brief silence of approximately 4 seconds ensued before my wife responded to the information about my emergency surgery in a hospital hallway. "Curtis," she said, her voice calm and decisive, a tone she used when she had already decided and was merely deciding on delivery. "I can't keep pouring money into situations like this." I thought I may have misunderstood her. "What? You're always in a predicament, the truck, the HVAC, now this." "I can't keep dipping into my savings every time something happens to you. You're no longer my burden." I fixed my gaze on the ceiling tile, the crack resembling a river on a map. "Diane, I require surgery tonight. My appendix might burst. My life is at risk." "You heard me the initial time." Her voice remained unaltered. "You'll manage to solve it, Curtis. You usually do." She disconnected. For a brief moment, I kept the phone pressed against my chest. I'm not one prone to tears. Maybe that's a shortcoming. My mother often pointed that out. Yet in that instance, something surged through me that I can't describe better than as sorrow. Not for the marriage itself exactly. For the image of it I had convinced myself was real. For the narrative I'd been nurturing within me where we were two individuals, despite our disparities and distances, who would still stand by each other in a genuine crisis. That story had concluded. The call lasted only 12 seconds, and she terminated it in 12 seconds without raising her voice or deviating from her usual demeanor. The relaxed manner of it all, her apparent lack of worry, revealed more about the state of my marriage than 3 years spent within its walls ever did. I contemplated my actions, weighing each one while lying on that gurney with an IV drip doing its steady work, as someone nearby coughed rhythmically, and the emergency room lights flickered in their unreliable buzz. I could contact my brother Terrell in Birmingham, but he was burdened with 2 small children and a job beginning at 5 in the morning. I could reach out to my assistant coach, Brandon, but this situation seemed too private to involve a colleague. I considered trying to negotiate a payment plan on my own, perhaps persuading the hospital to accept a partial sum now and allow me to settle the rest later. But the financial advisor had already informed me they required something definite tonight. I could resort to a cash advance on my credit card. Years ago, I found myself in need of financial assistance for car repairs, with only around $900 left on my credit card. Yet I hesitated to contact Renee due to feelings of embarrassment. I was a 43-year-old high school football coach, married with a house, and I felt that I should have my affairs under control. Asking for financial aid from my wife's younger sister seemed like an admittance of failure that I struggled to confront. The shame associated with asking for help is unique, but my situation was critical as my appendix was on the brink of rupturing, and my wife had just stated that she wasn't responsible for me. So I reached out to Renee instead, Diane's 38-year-old sister, who worked as a third-grade teacher at Columbia Elementary in Huntsville. She drove a 4-year-old Honda Civic that she had bought, used, and fully paid off. She wasn't wealthy. However, I would soon discover she was one of the kindest people I had ever encountered. The phone rang twice. "Curtis." Her voice was awake as if she hadn't been sleeping. "What's wrong?" "I'm at Huntsville Hospital," I said. "Appendix. They need to operate tonight, but I require $3,500 for the deductible, and I don't." My voice faltered. I regained control. I called Diane. She declined. There was silence. Then softly she refused again. Yes, it was Curtis. Her tone shifted. A barrier seemed to form around her, separating me from something else. "How much time do you have?" "The financial counselor will return in about 30 minutes. "I'm on my way," she replied without hesitation. "I'll arrive in 25 minutes. "Curtis, I don't want you to—" "Curtis, halt." Her voice was resolute yet not unkind. "You need to stop right there. In 25 minutes I'll be at the hospital and we'll tackle this issue together. You won't spend tonight lying there worrying about finances while your appendix is on the verge of rupturing. That's not an option tonight. Did you understand me? You nodded. You gazed at the ceiling, waiting. Renee arrived in 23 minutes. She strode through the emergency room doors, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt tied with crimson, her hair pulled back. She went directly to the nurse's station and inquired about Curtis Aldridge, and when they indicated down the hall, she made her way to me and scrutinized me. It was the look someone gives when taking stock, verifying your presence. And then she sat beside me on the plastic chair next to my gurney and opened her purse. "I sold my car this afternoon," she disclosed. I gaped at her. "What?" "A few weeks ago, someone had offered to purchase my Civic. I refused earlier but contacted him this afternoon following work as I had been contemplating a change anyways. He arrived at my house post-dinner, handed me $7,000 in cash and drove off with the car. It was inevitable eventually." She paused. "I had brought $3,500. That leaves me sufficient funds for another purchase. This is its purpose." For a brief moment, I struggled to speak. I truly couldn't find the words. "Renee," I managed at last. "Your car is merely a vehicle, Curtis." She placed her hand fleetingly on my arm. "You're an individual. Now let me locate that financial advisor before you hemorrhage in this corridor." I wish to confess the emotions coursing through me at that instant, as I believe it holds significance. I was not overwhelmed with feelings of warmth or gratitude as portrayed in novels. I experienced a sensation akin to a structure succumbing, an unexpected emotional strain releasing, albeit in a positive manner, as if I'd been maintaining an unyielding self-structure for so long that being told I was worthy of care overwhelmed me. Renee approached the financial advisor with her usual silent efficiency. She clarified the payment details, verified her information, and signed whatever was necessary. Upon the advisor's departure, she looked at me. "Did Diane understand how severe this situation was?" she inquired, her voice measured as if weighing each word before speaking it. "I warned her it might burst," I replied. Renee nodded thoughtfully. She remained silent. Her silence wasn't necessary. "They prepared me for surgery about an hour later." Renee waited. Spending 3.5 hours on a solitary hard plastic chair in the surgical waiting room, I was yet to leave when they transported me to recovery. A nurse informed me later that she had stayed in the hospital for 3 days following the surgery, typical recovery time for a laparoscopic appendectomy, as per my surgeon, Dr. Patricia Weil, who had apparently brought the operation to the brink of complications. Another few hours might have led to a ruptured appendix and a more convoluted, messy path to recovery. The petite, brisk Dr. Weil conveyed information as if from a manual, expecting understanding. On my first post-op day, she stood at the foot of my bed and shared that the inflammation had been substantial, that I'd been fortunate with my timing, and that I should anticipate feeling worse before improvement. Looking at the IV bag, then her tablet, she added, "Your sister-in-law is still in the waiting room. She's been here since last night." "She's more than just," I began, struggling to find the right words, as at that moment Renee was indeed my sister-in-law due to our ongoing marriage with Diane. The divorce papers were yet to be filed. "She's a friend," I concluded instead, knowing it wasn't entirely accurate but conveying the intended message. Dr. Weil eyed me with a familiar gaze that medical professionals adopt for patients dealing with complex personal truths. "You may welcome her now," she said, and departed. They admitted Renee some 20 minutes later. She entered bearing a present from the hospital gift shop, a crossword puzzle book and a box of crackers, explaining they were to alleviate my displeasure over the food at the hospital and symbolize a choice made regarding it. She placed the items on the small table next to my hospital bed and moved the chair near, yet not too close. She inquired about my well-being, listened attentively as I spoke for approximately 10 minutes, as surgery seemed to have released something within me, causing me to speak more in those 10 minutes than in the past 3 months. Diane visited on the second day, not to express regret, but to convey a message. She sat in the chair beside my hospital bed and gazed at me, her voice reminiscent of our 3-year marriage, laden with authority, a tone indicating the decision had been made and this conversation was mere procedure. "I've consulted with a lawyer. I wish to proceed with the divorce," she stated. I looked at her, simply responding, "Okay." She appeared surprised. "Is that all okay?" "Yes, you won't say anything more." There was a hint of slip in her management tone. I detected it. "What should I say, Diane?" "I'm unsure." I thought she had finished speaking. "I assumed you'd be angry. I'm on my 2nd day of appendix surgery recovery. I have a catheter, a drain tube, and around 18 staples in my stomach. I'm rather preoccupied to act as you anticipated. For a moment, she studied me, adjusting her thoughts. The dialogue wasn't progressing as planned. She seemed to have rehearsed something. I could sense it from the way her facial muscles tensed, ready for her lines, and yet I was not reciting mine. "My lawyer can contact yours," I said. "I need sleep now." She departed. What she didn't know at that time, which she learned 3 hours later from a common acquaintance who happened to be in the hospital that day for unrelated matters, was that Renee was there, had been there every day, and at that very instant was in the hospital cafeteria fetching us both sandwiches. After approximately 40 minutes, Diane returned and the nurses heard her in the corridor. She was not the composed woman with a management tone that I had spent 3 years married to. Instead, she seemed different altogether. Upon entering my room, her countenance displayed expressions I'd never seen before. "Renee is here," she informed me. "Yes, she's been here the entire time," Diane replied, her voice rising slightly. "Most of it. She funded your surgery. The revelation was true." "From where?" I inquired. "Her savings," came the response. I deliberately omitted the part about the car as I assumed Renee could recount her own narrative. What unfolded next offered a crystal-clear glimpse into what our last 3 years truly entailed. In that room, Diane quietly yet furiously conveyed to me that Renee had been intruding in our marriage, that Renee harbored excessive affection towards me, and her aid wasn't benevolence but meddling. She added that Renee had long awaited a chance like this one. I remained silent, allowing her to finish. Then I stated, "Your sister sold her car, Diane, and drove to this hospital, waiting in the waiting room for 3.5 hours because I called her for help, something I didn't ask you first." That is what transpired. Though Renee's intentions may be debated, that is the chronological series of events. The ensuing quietness after my correction was profound and lasting. Diane knew I was truthful. She remembered precisely what she had said on the phone, every word of it, and hearing those words echoed in the hospital room, devoid of context, was not the encounter she had anticipated. She departed without uttering another word. I later learned that the nurses gave her a cautious berth upon her exit. Renee returned with sandwiches approximately 10 minutes later, caught sight of my expression and asked, "She came back, didn't she?" "Yes." She seated herself, handed me a turkey sandwich, a bag of potato chips, and a Sprite. "Are you all right?" I replied. "I'm getting there." "You need to tell me something," Renee said. She began unwrapping her own sandwich. "You don't have to," she added. "I do." I met her gaze. She was observing me with a unique kind of focus, not pitying, not hopeful, simply attentive. "I can't properly express my gratitude for what you did. I understand it's not just the money. It's that you came. It's that you stayed. You made me feel valued when the one who should have did so dismissed me. I promise to repay every cent, no matter how long it takes," she replied casually. "I'm sure you will," she added, dismissing her apology for my damaged car. "I've already found a replacement online, a 2019 Accord with only 42,000 miles. It's even better than the one you had." She took a bite of her sandwich. "Cease apologizing for things beyond your control." In that hospital room, we ate our sandwiches and watched the evening news on mute, the scene offering an unusual sense of comfort, something I hadn't felt in a long time I can truthfully recall. I want to describe what followed those months, because I believe the post-crisis landscape holds equal importance as the crisis itself. I was released from the hospital on a Thursday. For 2 weeks, I was unable to drive and wasn't fully active for 6 more, causing me to miss the central part of the football season. My deputies oversaw practices, my defensive coordinator managed game nights, while I remained at home, analyzing films on my laptop and providing comments. In those 6 weeks, my team had a record of 5-3, which is commendable. Coach Henderson, my defensive coordinator, informed me later that the kids played as if they were determined to demonstrate something. I believe they were. Within a week after my discharge, Diane's lawyer and mine contacted us. The divorce process in Alabama wasn't quick, but fortunately it was straightforward for us. We had no children, no shared property beyond our house, which I owned prior to the marriage, and no business interests to untangle. On a Saturday in early November during a game, Diane moved out, leaving the key on the kitchen counter. I found it upon my return home. I spent some time standing in the kitchen. The house seemed altered without her belongings, not vacant per se, but more transparent, as if the fog had cleared. I phoned Renee. "She's left," I informed her. "Are you okay?" After a moment of sincere thought, I replied, "Yes, I believe I am." Her response hinted at a smile in her tone of breath. "That's good," she proposed. "You want to join me for dinner?" I plan to try cooking for the first time in nearly 2 months, and it might turn out poorly, but I must begin somewhere. I accepted, offering, I'll bring wine. The part of this narrative that I find challenging to articulate is one that involves complex emotions, ones that emerged gradually and authentically, and which I wish to portray with the precision they deserve. Renee and I did not spontaneously embrace when my divorce was finalized. That's not how it unfolded, and oversimplifying it would do us an injustice. Instead, our story progressed at a slower, more truthful pace. We dined at my home that particular November evening. We conversed until 11. She shared stories about her teaching, her pupils, a third grader who arrived knowing no English at all but, by May, was responding to questions. I recounted tales of my players, mentioning a boy named Darius on the defensive line who was courted by 3 SEC programs and yet continued to refer to me as Coach Aldridge, as if I were the most vital figure in the room. We discussed her sibling delicately, truthfully, without malice, and about the nature of their marriage and what I should have recognized earlier. I believe you did see it, Renee said. I think you chose to endure it instead. Do you believe that's why I stayed? She pondered this. I believe you were conditioned to consider staying as noble, and it is under the right circumstances. But sometimes remaining is merely a form of evasion with improved public relations. I gazed at her. At what point did you become so insightful? 3rd grade, she responded promptly. 22 8-year-olds could strip away all your falsehoods. This elicited a spontaneous laugh from me. It was the kind of laughter that emerges from an unguarded place, similar to how one notices sunlight filtering through a room and contemplating the length of time it had been in darkness. Our relationship did not commence until February, which marked 4 months since the divorce was legally finalized. I invited her out for a proper dinner at a restaurant instead of takeout at my kitchen table, and she agreed. I wore the jacket I'd purchased for the team banquet, and she donned a blue dress. We dined at Cotton Row downtown, overlooking the Tennessee River, and at the end of the evening she confessed that she had been hoping I would invite her for quite some time. How long is quite some time? I inquired. She pondered my question with the earnestness she reserved for serious queries. Perhaps since the hospital, she replied, but I didn't intend to act on it. It had to be you, because of Diane. After that dinner, 8 months have passed. I feel compelled to share where things stand because this isn't a fairy tale ending. It's something more lasting. My divorce from Diane was finalized in January, and she moved to Huntsville City. She felt more at home there than in Decatur, and she seems to be doing well. I harbor no ill feelings towards her. I simply regret not being honest with both of us earlier about what we were not offering each other. Renee was repaid the $3,500 in installments, the final payment made in April. She advised against it, but I clarified that I comprehended her caution, yet felt compelled to act, due to personal reasons unrelated to her actions. Her response was acceptance. This is one of the qualities I admire most in her. She attentively listens to genuine statements instead of preconceived assumptions. Currently, Renee drives a 2019 Accord, as anticipated, and it's superior to the Civic. My team concluded the season with an outstanding 8-4 record, our best performance in 6 years. Darius formalized his intention in February with a program I won't disclose here to avoid revealing our location, but it's significant. As I watched him sign that document with his mother crying next to him and his younger siblings snapping photos on their phones, I contemplated my father's words about the empty house. I don't believe he was entirely incorrect. I merely think he was discussing a different kind of silence. The hush born from concealing truths isn't tranquility. The quiet that stems from realization of one's proper place, that's an entirely distinct matter. During spring training, I led a defensive line with an undisturbed appendix and a girlfriend who analyzed game footage for me astonishingly accurately. "Did you play college ball?" I inquired once. "No," she replied, "but I've watched plenty of football." "With whom?" "With you," she said. "I've been to every home game for 4 years, Curtis." This revelation was news to me. In hindsight, I should have known this, but I didn't, and I realize it now. Perhaps this is how it always unfolded. Gradually and slightly askew, only after a hospital corridor and a cracked ceiling tile resembling a river. When asked about my takeaways from these events, in essence, some individuals in your existence might not be there out of genuine camaraderie or affection, but rather to exploit your unwavering nature. They seek someone who will bear their burden without resistance, making their journey smoother. If you are predisposed to endurance and have been conditioned by your upbringing to view steadfastness as a virtue, it can take an extended period to discern such situations. Sometimes luck shines on you. If the universe has a sense of fairness, you find yourself in a hospital corridor on a Tuesday night with a fever and a damaged appendix, and you make a call, and within 23 minutes someone arrives in a sweatshirt tied with crimson, holding car keys and $3,500 cash, and they look at you saying, "You matter." They mean it literally. You can't prepare for such events. They don't come because you deserve them or have earned them. They just appear in jeans, sitting on a plastic chair next to your gurney, asking about the financial counselor. 8 months later, I've learned this. The individuals who arrive when there's nothing in it for them are the ones worth arranging your life around. Everything else is merely noise. My name is Curtis Aldridge. I coach the defensive line at Jefferson High School in Decatur, Alabama, and I am doing well. What struck me most powerfully about Curtis's tale wasn't his wife refusing him, but rather the manner in which she did so calmly, without a hint of panic or hesitation. "You're not my responsibility anymore," she simply said. That chilling indifference spoke volumes. True love doesn't account or ponder, it merely appears. Renee didn't inquire about convenience. Instead, she sold her vehicle and rushed to the hospital. That's the yardstick. Abandon a comment below. Has anyone ever appeared for you like that? And if this channel is unfamiliar to you, subscribe. These are the tales worth hanging around for.